tag Mr. Global himself because I don't understand how we give U.S. oil companies $20 billion a year in subsidies and we don't get any benefit from that, of them keeping that oil here and trying to keep the price down.
So first of all, to be clear, the United States government, the taxpayers, are not writing checks to oil companies in the United States. The cost of doing business as an oil company, the expenses they incur, are tax deductible. Pretty much like any other business. Except it's not called a subsidy for any other business. It's only called a subsidy for the oil and gas industry because, evil. Because evil. Another important note is that for the most part, big oil has at this point been mostly excluded from these tax deductions. These are mainly for small and independent producers at this point. You see, because small and independent producers produce the vast majority of oil and natural gas in the United States. And since they are small companies and don't have huge balance sheets and a crazy number of assets, they are highly exposed to risk. So things like being able to depreciate your assets is a tax benefit to those small producers. Just like anyone else can depreciate their assets. And he says, we have these subsidies, which they're not subsidies, but, the United States gets no benefit from those subsidies, is what he says. The oil and gas industry is roughly 7.5% of the United States' total GDP. And roughly 5.5% of the United States' total employment. I believe in 18 of the last 20 years, the U.S. federal government and the states have received more money in tax revenue than the total oil and gas industry in the United States than all of their profits combined. That is how much of a cash cow the oil and gas industry is for the federal and state, for the federal government and the state governments in this country. I mean, if you look over a 20-year period, we're talking trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. And that's why those tax deductions won't go away, because the government cannot afford to lose that revenue. Oftentimes, people in government talk about sending money out and how much money they get in return for what they send out, and they often equate this to welfare and things like that. There simply is no bigger return on investment than the tax deductions given to the oil and gas industry in the United States. It is unmatched. The oil and gas industry employs roughly 1 million people in this country, and those are high-paying jobs. That all those people pay taxes. Oil and gas, it's taxed when it comes out of the well, it's taxed when it gets to the refinery, it's taxed when it leaves the refinery, it's taxed when it leaves the fucking gas pump. So to suggest that the U.S. taxpayers get nothing for allowing oil companies to simply deduct their expenses like any other business, not exactly. The taxpayers make a fortune on the oil and gas industry. A fortune. An obscene amount of money that is just wasted by the government. Now, if you get rid of these tax deductions, I believe, I'm not certain, but I believe we would see a definite decline in production and activity and a loss of jobs in the United States, as the people who finance the industry will simply find somewhere else to park their money. And let's not forget that what the U.S. oil and gas industry is doing right now is really the only thing between where we are, what we're paying for gas, and paying, what they pay in Europe for gas, basically. And I'll just finish with, there are single companies in this country that receive more subsidies, actual real subsidies, than the entire oil and gas industry receives in tax deductions every single year. And those companies do not provide a product to us that is a national security issue in any way. Their existence could stop tomorrow, and it wouldn't hurt us in any way. And there's always the possibility that ending these tax deductions could cause the price of oil to get so high that it wouldn't matter. And the oil companies would just keep producing because oil would be some insanely high number. And maybe then you could see how those tax deductions help the average American. Yeah, maybe then. I don't know.